Ever catch the clock at, say, 11:11 and feel a little jolt? Like maybe something's up. Or maybe you've had those coincidences that just feel, well, too strange to ignore.
Definitely. Happens to a lot of people.
Well, this deep dive is all about those moments, those uncanny connections, the ones that hint at maybe something more than just chance.
Right.
We're diving into some discussions around synchronicity and related ideas to try and get a grip on what these experiences might really mean for you.
And it's interesting because what we're exploring here, it really moves beyond just simple probability, doesn't it?
Yeah, it seems to.
The whole concept of synchronicity, especially how C.G. Jung saw it, suggests there's maybe a deeper level to reality.
Okay.
Where these coincidences actually become meaningful, like they reflect hidden patterns.
Patterns, interesting.
And it makes you think, how would someone like Tesla,
the inventor,
Nikola Tesla, so focused on energy, universal interconnectedness, how might he have seen these things?
Good question.
Perhaps as momentary harmonies, little alignments within this huge cosmic network he talked about.
Exactly. Jung was such a pioneer, wasn't he? Suggesting these meaningful coincidences weren't just random noise.
Absolutely. He felt they were clues.
Clues pointing towards something much more profound. And then you bring in Tesla's idea that everything is linked by energy.
Right.
And it makes you wonder, doesn't it, if spotting something like 11:11 could be a fleeting glimpse of that underlying connection.
Like a little whisper.
Yeah, a whisper in the language of the universe, maybe. So the key idea here, it seems, is that Jung saw these different worlds, our minds, Eastern thought, even physics, kind of pointing to the same thing.
This underlying interconnectedness.
Making synchronicity almost a tangible sign of it.
And Jung's thinking, it didn't just appear out of thin air, right? He was really influenced by Eastern philosophies.
Which often talk about everything being connected.
Precisely. And also, quantum physics was just starting to develop them.
Shaking up all the old ideas about reality.
Exactly. Plus, his own deep dives into the unconscious mind were absolutely central. He proposed this idea of he called it a cosmic intelligence.
Cosmic intelligence.
Yeah, like a deeper level where our internal world, our psychology, interacts with the external world. Think of the collective unconscious he talked about.
Like a shared library.
Kind of like a shared library of human experiences, symbols, things we all tap into, often without even realizing it.
So it's almost like our inner mood, our emotional state could somehow make ripples out there in the real world?
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
Jung definitely believed that, especially during times of big personal change or transformation.
Okay.
Our inner states could find reflections in what happens outside us. Synchronicity from that angle becomes a kind of message.
A message from that deeper level.
Exactly. But not cause and effect in the usual way we think about it.
More like a meaningful alignment.
A meaningful alignment, that's a good way to put it.
And didn't he have a really striking personal story about this? The one with his patient and a beetle?
Oh, the golden scarab. Yes, that's such a powerful illustration of his idea.
Tell us about that one.
Okay, so he had this patient, and she was telling him about a dream she'd had, featuring a golden scarab.
A symbol that meant something to her.
Right, it resonated, but it felt kind of disconnected from her current life. And just as she's describing this dream, there's a tapping sound at the window. Jung opens it, and in flies a scarab beetle.
Whoa! Like the actual beetle.
The actual beetle. And apparently they were quite rare in that area.
So Jung saw that as...
not just chance. He saw it as a powerful synchronistic event, a meaningful link between her inner world, the dream symbol, and external reality. Maybe even facilitated by this underlying energy we've been talking about.
Okay, so we have these meaningful coincidences, maybe linked to some deeper energy. How do Jung's ideas about archetypes fit in? You mentioned those universal patterns.
Right, archetypes are another key piece. They exist within that collective unconscious we mentioned.
The hero, the mother, the wise old man, those kinds of things.
Exactly those. Universal patterns deep in our shared psyche. Now, Jung thought that big life experiences, transformative ones, can activate these archetypes within us.
Okay.
And this activation, this surge of psychic energy, could sort of resonate outwards. It might draw events or situations towards us that align with whichever archetype is active.
So the energy pulls things in.
That's the idea. These resonances can then show up as synchronicities. Imagine the hero archetype gets activated in you when you're facing a huge challenge.
Exactly.
This intense focus, this inner drive. It could almost create a subtle pull in your environment. You become more tuned in to seeing opportunities or events that fit that heroic theme.
And then you notice them as synchronicities.
Precisely. So if someone's going through a real personal struggle, like their own hero's journey,
They might start noticing more heroic coincidences around them, like finding unexpected help or strength.
exactly that. But here's a really crucial point. These events don't just arrive with a label saying synchronicity, meaning this.
Ah, okay. You have to figure it out.
You do. It's like interpreting a dream. Understanding a synchronicity needs awareness, and you have to be willing to dig a bit deeper.
Like learning a secret language.
Yeah, a language that speaks directly to your emotional state, maybe your spiritual state at that moment. You have to pay attention to the specifics and think, what could this mean for me right now?
So it's not like a universal dictionary of symbols.
Not at all. More like a personal Rosetta Stone, you know? You're deciphering it based on your own context.
That makes a lot of sense. It's very individual. So let's talk about some real-world examples. What kind of synchronicities might people actually experience?
Oh, they show up in all sorts of ways.
Yeah.
Think about dreaming of an old friend, someone you haven't spoken to in ages.
Uh-huh.
And then the very next day, boom, you get a call or a text from them.
That happens.
It does. And that emotional connection in the dream seems to somehow line up with them actually reaching out.
Rare.
Or encountering an animal that has some kind of symbolic meaning for you. Maybe you see an owl often linked with wisdom, right? And it appears just when you're wrestling with a really big decision. You can feel like a little nudge.
A nudge to look inward.
Exactly. Like, hey, maybe the answer's inside you. I remember once I was really uncertain about a career move.
Yeah.
And suddenly I started seeing images of compasses everywhere. Billboards, magazines, online ads. It felt like this gentle reminder to, find my direction.
Wow. Okay, and what about those repeated numbers? You hear about 11.11 all the time.
Oh yeah, that's a super common one. People often report seeing it or other sequences, especially during times of big personal change or when emotions are running high.
Like when things feel kind of intense.
Exactly. Picture this. You're at a crossroads, maybe with your job, maybe in a relationship. Things feel complex.
Okay.
And suddenly you start noticing 1111 on your phone clock, license plates, maybe even the total on a receipt.
And it feels different.
Right. It's that feeling that goes beyond just, oh, look at that. It's a sense that maybe there's something more going on here.
So with these numbers, is it like some kind of subtle message? Not just random.
Well, that's how many people experience it. It feels like more than chance.
So how do people interpret it?
Some folks turn to numerology. Have you ever looked into that?
A little bit. Numbers having meanings.
Yeah. In numerology, 11 is often seen as a master number. It's linked to things like intuition, spiritual awakening.
Okay.
So seeing 1111 might be interpreted as like an amplified wake-up call, a nudge to pay attention to your inner guidance.
Interesting. But what if you're not into numerology?
Even then, these repeated numbers can act like little anchors in our busy lives, can't they?
How so?
They can just jolt you into the present moment for a second, give you a tiny pause for reflection amidst all the chaos.
Okay, so just noticing the pattern can be a prompt, like, hey, pay attention.
Precisely. Be more mindful right now. And again, the personal meaning is key.
Right.
What you make of seeing 1111 probably connects what's going on with you emotionally or psychologically at that moment. What were you just thinking about? Now, of course, skeptics will bring up pattern recognition.
Our brains liking to find patterns. Cognitive bias.
Exactly. Our brains are wired to find connections, sometimes even where there aren't any, objectively speaking. But
Really?
the emotional impact of these synchronicities often feels like it carries more weight than just random chance. It demands a bit more explanation for the person experiencing it.
Definitely. I've also heard people talk about songs. Like a song comes on the radio that perfectly nails how they're feeling.
Especially during intense times, like a breakup.
Exactly.
That's another classic example. It's like the outside world is mirroring your inner emotional state directly.
Yeah.
Then you have those chance encounters, you lose your job, feeling awful, you go for coffee.
And bump into someone looking for exactly your skills.
Right. That seemingly accidental meeting that turns out to be incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
Or moments in nature, seeing a meteor shower when you're feeling lost and questioning everything.
Like a cosmic wake-up call.
Could feel that way, prompting deeper thoughts about your place in it all. And even just timely assistance. That feeling that someone shows up with the exact support or advice you need right when you need it most.
It's all these little things, or sometimes big things, that add up. They create this feeling that maybe it's not all just random coincidence. Now, I'm really curious about this connection you mentioned earlier between synchronicity and lucid dreaming. How do those relate?
Yeah, it's an interesting parallel. Both phenomena seem to exist right there at the border. between our conscious minds and our unconscious minds.
Okay, the borderlands.
Right. Lucid dreaming, where you realize you're dreaming and can sometimes even influence what happens.
Yeah, I've tried that. It's wild.
It is. And synchronicity, these meaningful coincidences happening when we're awake. Both of them invite us to explore that complex link between our inner world and the reality we experience outside.
And neither one fits neatly into standard explanations.
They both tend to elude straightforward, rational explanations, don't they? They operate in ways that can feel a bit mysterious.
So synchronicity is like the universe acting a bit dreamlike out here.
You could definitely think of it that way. Synchronicity is like this dance of external events, but they're connected by meaning, not just cause and effect.
Okay.
Whereas lucid dreaming is more like having a conscious playground inside the unconscious.
A playground in your head?
Exactly. But taken together, they hint that the relationship between our minds and the world is maybe much richer, much more interactive than we usually think.
They offer pathways, maybe.
Potential pathways, yeah, to a more integrated understanding of our own consciousness and its potential.
And you also mentioned lucid dreaming as a source of creative inspiration, tying back to Tesla.
Absolutely. There's a remarkable link between lucid or semi-lucid states and creativity. Think back to Nikola Tesla again.
With his focus on energy and connection.
Right. He apparently used this technique, sitting in a chair, holding a metal ball with the metal plate on the floor below.
Okay, why?
The idea was, as he drifted off to sleep, the ball would drop, hit the plate, and wake him up just enough. He wanted to capture ideas from that liminal state, that space between waking and sleeping.
That hypnagogic state.
Exactly. That state is known for vivid visualizations. And he reportedly got many of his incredible inventor ideas that way.
That's amazing, deliberately mining that in-between space.
It is. And he's not the only one. Paul McCartney famously dreamed the melody for Yesterday.
Really? The whole melody?
Woke up with it, apparently thought he must have heard it somewhere before because it was so complete.
Wow.
Dmitri Mendeleev, the chemist, dreamt the structure of the periodic table, lined up all nice and neat.
No way. The periodic table came from a dream.
According to the story, yes. And more recently, Larry Page, Google co-founder. He talked about the basic idea for Google coming to him in a dream.
Downloading the entire web.
Something like that. Dreaming of downloading the whole web and figuring out how to link it all. That was the seed.
Okay, those are some serious creative breakthroughs from dreams.
Right. So just like lucid dreaming shows how powerful our internal mindscape is.
Yeah.
How it can create these vivid realities.
Yeah.
Synchronicity suggests that maybe our inner state, our emotions, our focus, can also have a subtle but significant influence on the patterns we notice, or maybe even attract, in the external world.
Wow. Okay, so both things, synchronicity and lucid dreaming, they really point to this deep feedback loop between inside and outside.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Lucid dreaming shows us our internal reality can be incredibly vivid, even controllable.
Right.
Synchronicity hints that our external reality might be more connected to, and maybe even responsive to, our inner world than we typically assume.
Which leads to a huge question.
Yeah.
How much does our internal state actually affect how we perceive the world? Or maybe even affect the world itself? And how much does the world feed back into us? A fascinating loop.
It really is.
Yeah.
Okay, so bringing this back down to earth, what's a practical takeaway? If someone listening keeps seeing 11.11 or noticing other weird coincidences, what's a helpful way to respond? Well, the next time it happens, you see 11.11, or another number pops up repeatedly, or you have one of those uncanny coincidences, just take a moment. Pause.
Just stop for a second.
Yeah, just stop. And maybe reflect, just briefly. What was I thinking about right before I noticed that? What was I doing?
Okay.
It could be a really simple opportunity to practice mindfulness. A little check-in with yourself. Where's my head at right now?
That sounds useful regardless of what you believe about it.
Exactly. Some people like to use those moments to set a positive intention or even make a quiet wish.
Like, make a wish at 11.11.
Kind of like that, yeah. Or you could just take a couple of deep breaths, do a mini meditation, just center yourself for 10 seconds.
Okay.
If you happen to be wrestling with a big decision when it happens, maybe it's a little cue to step back, look at the bigger picture.
A reminder to zoom out.
Could be. So look, whether you see it as just a coincidence, your brain doing its pattern thing, or something more significant.
Yeah.
It's always a good opportunity for a quick mental and emotional check-in. A moment to just be fully present.
That's a great way to frame it. This has been a really fascinating exploration, looking at this intricate dance between our inner worlds and the outer world through synchronicity, lucid dreaming, all of it.
It really makes you think differently about things.
It definitely encourages you to look at those seemingly random events in life from a totally new angle.
And maybe the interesting thing to leave people with is this. Just consider the next seemingly random event or repeated number you notice.
Okay.
Could it be just chance? Absolutely. But could it also be maybe a subtle nudge, a reflection of your inner state somehow playing out? Or even perhaps a tiny piece of a much larger interconnected puzzle that we're only just starting to glimpse.
Wow.
Just keeping an open mind to those possibilities.
Well, it can really enrich how we see ourselves in this incredibly complex world around us.